was there. And I know that God has probably been doing a lot in your life too. And if not, He's going to, because this is the year of exposing. Why is He exposing us? Why is He exposing weak areas in our marriages? Why is He exposing weak areas in our relationship with our children? Why is He exposing weak areas in leadership? Why is He exposing areas of the way you think and the way you act and your character? I mean, no, character is who you are when no one else is around. You might know that? Your character is when no one else is around, no one sees your thoughts. Who you are is who your character is. And God is exposing these areas. Why is He doing that? Why is He exposing these weak areas? Because He wants to make fun of us? Absolutely not. He does that because He wants to change us. And see, He wants a people that love Him and know Him, a people that are not robots who are serving God because they have to, but serve God because they want to, and because they love Him, and because He is worthy of praise. So He is changing areas of our life so that we can be more like Him. And so in the year of exposure, the thing that God's been speaking to me, and you guys know, is the purpose of God. His continual purpose on why He's doing certain things. So Wednesday night, He's talking to me about His purpose, and He says this. He says, are you that generation I'm looking for? Are you that generation I'm looking for? Are we that generation the Lord is looking for? Are we the generation that God has been looking for? The Word of God tells us that He goes to and fro seeking that He may show Himself strong on somebody's behalf. Are we that generation that God has been waiting and been holding out and saying, okay, I'm going to have my purpose fulfilled. I'm waiting for a group of people, a remnant, a group of people who are going to fulfill my purpose. Are we that generation? That's the question we're going to ask ourselves this morning. But I want to tell you something too. As He's asking me about this generation, He also begins to tell me something that I believe is going to happen in the future. That I believe that something even kind of prophetic that's going to happen, and a thing that God is wanting to release in a season that He's wanting to release in Christianity. And I believe that this is going to be an interesting thing that God is going to do. I believe that God is wanting to open up the season again for the miraculous. And I believe that the miraculous has to come at a point in time because it is a needed time. Why do we not see as many miracles today that we have seen or read about in the years past? We've read about the promises, we've read about the healings, we've read about these, and some of us have read some revival books and different things, saying, my goodness, they would do tremendous things. My goodness, Peter's shadow would heal somebody. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? I mean, you're walking, your shadow heals somebody. That's miraculous. And God wants to begin to open up the miraculous again. But why would He do that? Because He always opens the miraculous in a time of great need. In a time of great need. And I believe that there is going to be a great need for the miraculous. A great need for the miraculous. He's looking for a generation who is going to walk in the miraculous, but not be noted for the miraculous. Let me tell you what I mean by that. In other words, when things begin to happen, miracles begin to happen, and let's say you lay hands on us, you're not going to get credit for that. You're not going to get the recognition for that. You're not going to get on stage and get a white suit and white hair and everybody goes, look how great you are. That's not what's going to happen. In fact, you're not going to have your names in lights. It's not going to be on a billboard, come and watch my ministries do all these things. It's not going to be that. It's going to be a time and a place where no one gets the credit but Him. It is a generation that is a nameless, placeless people who don't care about anything or don't fear anything but the fear of the Lord. A generation who is going to the streets and are compelling them to come in, but also they're walking in the miraculous on the streets. And they're doing it in the church house, they're doing it in the grocery store. I'll never forget, I've told you guys one of these testimonies that changed my life. And you know, being at the right time at the right place is something awesome. But another thing, when the Holy Spirit says, I need you to do something in a most uncomfortable area. I remember, I'm going to give you two stories that happened in my life. One time I was working at Toys R Us. I was a night stalker at night. No, I wasn't a nice stalker like stalking women. I was like putting material on the shelf. I was stalking like that. Before somebody gets the wrong idea. Scratch that out of the recording, please. But I was doing that, and I remember this young man had just got hired. And it was an interesting time in my life anyways. I started working there. I was working for 4 days and just learning the ropes. Scott, and guess what happened? My manager and the associate manager quit the same night, walked out. And I was left there with a whole bunch of new people, and I was only hired for 4 days. And I was like, what are we going to do? Well, I just naturally do what I do. I took lead, and I began to lead the crew, and we began to get the material out for the next 2 or 3 months. And of course, I didn't want any recognition for that, but they didn't care whether I did that or not. And so during that time, a young man gets hired. His name is Patrick, and he starts coming and working for our company. And I noticed that he was in good spirits most time, and one day particularly, he was very down. And and often being a pastor, my heart looks at people, and I study people, and I watch them, and I see their actions, and I try to discern what's going on in their life. And I knew something wasn't wrong, right? And here I was, putting some toys on the shelf, and guess what? The Holy Spirit speaks to me. And he says, Patrick is going to commit suicide tonight. And I said, Lord. So what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to go talk to him. I said, what do I say? I mean, it's kind of crazy going up to a young man and saying, the Lord just told me you're going to kill yourself. Yeah. I mean, that's just crazy, right? I didn't know what else to say. I wanted to try to enter in like float off the ground, like, whoa. Maybe that would get his attention. I don't know what to say. When I watched him, he went through lunch, and he just was sitting out by himself, and I come out of lunch, and I walked past him, and then the Spirit of God is hitting my heart. You ever get that part of your heart that's beating? Boom, you got to say something. You got to say something. So I turned around, and I said, Patrick, I know, and I usually start this way when I don't know what to say. I know you don't know this, but I'm a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is what the Lord told me. The Lord told me that you were going to commit suicide. Both feet broke down. You began to leave. I said, what's going on? Well, my girlfriend that I've been with for 9 years cheated on me. She's pregnant by my best friend. It was just a mess. And I just felt like not living. Well, he had told me that he never even knew that there was a God. And I was able to talk to him, pray with him, and lead him really to the Lord, and whatever he did with the Lord after I led him to, was whatever he did, but was able to talk to him. And being there in that moment, a moment of miraculous power, a moment of clarity, a moment of being there. Now, there was another instance, another time working. I need to go back to work. Working, and I go into a Thai food restaurant. They're on Emerald Boulevard. And there I am eating my food, and this older man comes in. And if anybody's ever seen anybody really sick, you can tell when somebody's really sick physically. And this man comes in, and he makes his way through the restaurant, and before I know it, we hear this loud crash. He fell and hit a table trying to stop himself. When he tried to stop himself, he knocked off plates and cups and everything. It was quite a racket. I mean, it just was crazy. You don't want to be embarrassed for the guy or anything. You don't want to look. But his wife starts screaming, and everyone gets attention. And there was a hospital that was very close to us, or one of the hospitals called BSA, Baptist St. Anthony's Hospital. And there were some nurses in the back, and she started calling for the nurses to help him. And I guess it just was and she stood up with tears and just couldn't hardly talk and said, please forgive me and my husband. My husband's got terminal cancer. He's not expecting to live. And I don't know why she felt compelled to do that. Of course, being a pastor, my heart was broken. I thought, God, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? And I just go back to eating. And the Lord told me, he says, you're going to have to go lay hands on him and pray for him. I said, God, right here? He said, yeah, I want you to go lay hands on him and pray for him. And how many of you have ever heard from the Holy Spirit, and you know you got to do something, but man, it is difficult to get in and say, I'm going to do this and make a fool of myself. And all the questions come up. What if it doesn't work? What if, right, come on. What if I pray late and talk to him and he cusses? What if this I look like a fool? I mean, come on, you know all the things that the devil tries to tell you not to do, and I was doing it all, and again, my heart starts beating. He said, you have to pray for him. Watch him eat his food, and guess what, Pastor Troy? Guess what happened? I was sitting there, I see him get up, and I leave, and I go, shh, I don't have to do that. And the Spirit of God says, get up now and go pray for him. So I had to get up, and I went, and I left the restaurant. And again, not knowing what to say, I say, sir, I know you don't know me, but I'm a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. Can I pray for you? And he said, sure. And he was in his car, and he was just like, hold on. He was shaking, trying to just hold on. And I laid hands on him, and I prayed for him, and I prayed God would heal him. And I did everything I knew to pray, and I just said, you know, and he said, thank you, got his car and drove off. You know, and I saw him and his wife thanked me, and they left, and I was like, praise God. He left, and a couple of weeks later, the guy that I was eating lunch with, who happened to be my boss at the time, came in and said, you'll never guess what happened. And of course, I'm in the warehouse, and my job at the time is slinging sheetrock. I had to stack sheetrock and carry some job sites. And I was doing sheetrock and loading it up, and he said, you'll never guess what happened. I said, what? He said, remember that guy we prayed for? I said, which guy? He said, the guy that was at the restaurant. Yeah. They came back into the restaurant, and they were looking for you. And I said, why? He said, they went to the doctor and came back, and he was completely healed of cancer. Those are times of miraculous, because God does things miraculous in times of great need. And I believe that God is going to open up a season of miraculous one more time for us, a window of miraculous things, so that we can see God for who He is. So I want to tell you guys a little bit of things. Why don't you go with me to Matthew chapter 12. And I don't know if I'm going to finish all this today. But also knowing this, that we live in a time and an area and an upcoming months, an upcoming year, that some things may get really rough. And if they get really rough, it's because we need God to show up. You know, a lot of times people really, hearts are really tender, and we probably testify this when we're going through a lot of bad things. It seems when we're going through a lot of good things, our hearts is not as quite as tender towards the Lord. In fact, we kind of forget to seek Him because things are going great. It's only when things are going really rough does it seem like we're like, oh God, I need you now. You know? Matthew chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 1. I'm going to tell you the story, and this is just, I want to give you the backdrop of what I want to go into on this. Matthew 12. Verse 1 through 45, and that's a lot. At the time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath. But he said that, have you not read what David did when he was hungry? And he and those that were with him, now of how they entered the house of God, and they ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Yet I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For the Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath. Now when he had departed from there, he went to the synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And that they might accuse him. So I'm giving you a backdrop. Here's Jesus, his disciples are going through the grain field, they're eating, the Pharisees come out, right? All of these things are happening, and this sets up a moment in time where a guy comes out with a withered hand. And his withered hand, and they're asking him because they just had this confrontation with Jesus concerning the Sabbath. And he told them, look, he's the Lord of the Sabbath. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath regardless. And he talked to them about David eating out of the temple, the showbread of the temple, and all of this backdrop on the Sabbath day. And here comes this man with her, and it was time for the miraculous to happen. And here he comes and they're asking him, is it lawful for you to heal on the Sabbath or not? So I'm going to be talking about the miraculous, so I want to give a little bit of backdrop. Verse 11, then he said to them, what man is there among you who had one sheep that falls in the pit on the Sabbath, who would not lay a hold of it and lift it out? Or how much more valuable than this man is than a sheep? What is he saying? He's saying, look, even if you had an animal that fell in a pit on the Sabbath, you don't let that animal die just because he falls in a pit on the Sabbath. You don't let him just die there? Or would you not have compassion and pull him out of the pit? How much more important is this man than the sheep? How much more important is he than an animal? And so what he's hitting them on is their lack of compassion and their lack of heart and their lack of understanding. What they were very jaded, and they were looking at only a certain way, and he was trying to change the way they thought. Quit looking at the hardness of it and start looking at the compassion about it. Look, this man's hand is withered. Do you think it's right for me to heal on the Sabbath? This man is hurt, right? And so he says to them, verse 12, of how much more value then is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to be good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and he restored it as whole as the other. And then the Pharisees went and plotted against him that they might destroy him. Now look at this. He heals the man, and they're mad because he did it on the Sabbath. So from that moment on, they said, we're going to get this guy. We're going to kill him. They're being threatened, by the way, right? Their authority, who they think they are, is being threatened. And here, this man, I'm sure that man was glad Jesus was there that day, and not just the guys sitting there, the Pharisees standing there. They went out to plot against him, how they might destroy him. Verse 15. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew from there, and great multitudes followed him, and he healed them all. Yet he warned them not to make him known, that it might be fulfilled what was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, behold my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will declare justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel, nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. That's not talking about street preaching, by the way. That's talking about when he's being crucified. He doesn't scream out and like that. So much pain and anguish that he's making himself known. Look at this. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoking flax he will not quench, till he sends forth justice to victory, and his name, and in his name the Gentiles will trust. Then one was brought to him who was demon-possessed, blind and mute, and he healed him, so that the blind and the mute man both spoke and saw. And all the multitudes were amazed and said, could this be the son of David? Now when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of demons. Man, these jokers, they are just crazy. So here's the pattern. You see that the Pharisees are upset because it's the Sabbath, but Jesus heals, 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 and heals. It's the season of miraculous things happening. It is a moment in time where Jesus is healing miraculous things. A withered hand becoming whole, and a person demon-possessed, dumb and deaf and unable to speak, can speak all of a sudden, can hear all of a sudden, can be in his right mind all of a sudden. All these miraculous things are happening right in the midst of all these crazy other things happening. Right in the midst of all these things that is going completely nuts, here Jesus is doing the miraculous thing. I tell you, there's a season when things are going to go completely crazy, but in that season, there's going to be a time of miraculous things happening. And I tell you, the Pharisees didn't even realize that it was Jesus, the Messiah, was there. They didn't even realize that. They didn't realize that it was the Son of God. They didn't realize that the Master was there. They didn't realize that the Lord was there because they were too busy focused on everything else, and they kept their eyes off of the miraculous. Now he casts a demon out. What do you think they say? Well, it's the power of Beelzebub. Right? You do it by the power of the devil, is what he's saying. But Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, even a kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. If Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will this kingdom stand? And if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons cast them out? Boy, got them there. Therefore they shall be your judges. But if I cast out demons by the Spirit of God, surely the kingdom of God is come upon you. How can you enter a strong man's house and plunder his good, unless he first binds the strong man, and then he will plunder his house? He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters abroad. Therefore I say to you that every sin and blasphemy will be given a man, but a blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven to him. Anyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man, it will be forgiven him. But whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit, I will not forgive him, neither in this age or the age to come. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruits. Brood of vipers, how can you begin being evil, speak good things? Or out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil things. But I say to you, for every idle word a man shall speak, he will have to give an account on the day of judgment. That's a pretty heavy one right there, by the way. I don't know if I, really understand the gravity of that sometimes. About every idle word spoken, you'll have to give an account for it. So next time before you say something evil to somebody, think about it, and you have to give an account for it when you're doing that. This thing says here. Verse 37, for by your words you are justified, by your words you shall be condemned. Then some of the scribes answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But he answered and said to me, an evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. And no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. Now, what do you think is happening here? This is all building up to something. Jesus is healing, casting out devils. Things are happening. All of a sudden, they're mad at him. They're wanting to kill him. They want to destroy him. They're saying all these things. And now he begins to talk to them about something very important. They say, okay, if you truly are who you say you are, give us a sign that you're the Messiah. Give us a sign that you're the one we've been looking for. By what power, by what authority do you think you have to cast out devils? What, you perverse or you wicked generation. Only a wicked generation seeks after a sign, but none will be given but the one of Jonah. What is the sign of Jonah? Just like Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of the whale, so shall the Son of Man spend 3 days in the belly of the earth, and on the third day he will rise again. In other words, he's saying, what the sign I'm going to give you is my resurrection. The sign I'm going to give you is the miraculous, beyond all miraculous things, is the resurrection of the dead. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen in these days and ages, and I can tell you, I've seen some things happen, healings. I've seen people raised from the dead, or at least an animal raised from the dead. I've seen somebody on Bourbon Street have his ears open for the first time, was completely dead. I've seen something, but there's no greater sign that was ever given to mankind in the miraculous was the fact that he rose from the dead. Yes. And most people and today and most religions deny that very purpose, that he rose from the dead. And so he's saying is, if you're wanting to see signs and wonders, you're wanting to see miracles, he's not going to deny signs and miracles. what he's going to say is the greatest miracle of all, if you keep your eye on it, is the fact that he rose from the dead, proving to be the Son of God, proving to be Christ alone, proving that he's the King of Kings. He said, this is the sign you're going to get. Amen? So we're going to live in an age of the miraculous. And I'm going to tell you, why is he doing this? Why would God begin to do miraculous things again? Is it for us to get built up? No, because he's telling people, keep your eyes on me. Yes. He said, what I'm telling you is watch what happens in my life. He's giving them a pre-warning or even a prophetic word. Watch, I'm going to die, and on the third day I'm going to rise again. He said, now you're going to see something. See, the miraculous are given so that we would begin to focus on the Lord again. It's not for us to get built up, but it's for us to say, I want to know the God of the miraculous. Yes. So he's telling them, keep your eyes on me. And I love it because he's telling them, who do you think you are? You just wait and see. By what authority? You just wait and see. He said, because I'm going to come and I'm going to bust out of that grave. And on the third day, you're going to see that I say exactly who I am. And that you know that everything I've done is for you. Yes. I'm doing this so that you'll know that I'm the Lord your God. Yes. That's what he's saying. Yes. Amen? Yes. Okay. And he tells them this. Now look what he says. Except the son of Jonah, for a man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart. Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a great fish. So will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Then the men of Nineveh, listen to this, will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. If indeed a greater than Jonah is here, then the queen of the south will rise up in judgment with this generation to condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. For indeed a greater than Solomon is here. When an unclean spirit, that's what he says this, when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes to the dry places seeking rest and finds none. Then he says, this is a demon talking, I will return back to the house where I came from. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and enter and dwell there, and the last state of the man shall be worse than the first. Now here's the kicker. So shall it be with this wicked generation. That's a kicker right there. He's saying, if Nineveh repented, and it even talks about later Sodom and Gomorrah, and I believe it's in Luke, it talks about even Sodom and Gomorrah came to repent, or when it came to repent, or would rise up in judgment against this generation. He's saying there is a generation that's going to be 7 times worse than any other generation. It's like a demon gets cast out of somebody. That person gets clean and swept out, gets his life in order, although he doesn't have the Spirit of God living in him. But he's cleaned out, and the Spirit says, you know what, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to take 7 times worse. And the state of that person becomes 7 times worse than it was before. When this generation hits, it's 7 times worse. We are going to see a generation that is 7 times worse than we've ever seen in history. But that's the time of the miraculous. See, there's always a time of the miraculous. He doesn't just leave us, oh, we are in such a bad state, without him showing up. Then there's a need for the miraculous. Yes. See, there's no need for miraculous too much. I mean, I know we're belling higher than ever. Cancer in our world today, than we ever had. We're dealing with more diseases than we ever had, it seems like. It seems like we're dealing with more suicides and more mental issues than we ever had in society. Can you see that the generation is going old, waxing worse and worse and worse and worse? It's getting 7 times worse than it was even in that generation. But that's the time when God shows up and begins to do something. If you ever felt like you're in a dry time, this is time for the miraculous. Now I'm going to give you some other good words today. Amen? You guys with me so far? Okay. What's going on today? book of Psalms. But in this generation is 100 years, by the way. In a generation, the Bible tells in the book of Acts that David served God in his generation. In other words, he was the generation that God was looking for. And the question is, are we going to be that generation that God is looking for? Look at this, Psalms 24. God is looking for a generation in the midst of a perverse generation. Just like he made Noah a righteous man in his perverse generation, just like he called Abram in his generation, just like he called other people in their generations, God is calling us in this generation to be something different. Amen? Yeah. Now, I'm going to give you this word before I go to this. I'm going to give you this little other information real quick. Why the miraculous is showing up, you're going to get some charlatans, or you're going to get some fakes, or you're going to get some people who are going to only focus on the miraculous. That's it. They're going to take advantage of the miraculous things happening so they can get more money in their pocket and so they can get on stage and become more popular. You're going to see this happen, so don't grow weary when you see these things happen. Don't grow weary when the miraculous things start happening, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, amen, just because somebody is using those things. There's been seasons when the miraculous has gone forth, and we see from tent revivals to different things, some were legit, some were not. And there was a lot of people that were fake during that time. And there is a generation, and people are sensing it, that the miraculous is coming up, but boy, they don't want to be fake. And there's a group of people who are going to be fake. And they're going to use this. How do I know that? Matthew 7 tells us that they'll do great wonders and miraculous things in his name. But he said, depart from me, you worker of lawlessness. I don't know you. I was never intimate with you. And what he's telling them was, you didn't keep your eyes on me. You kept your eyes on all of these other things, and you didn't keep your eyes on me. He said, you did all these great, and guess what? Things were happening. He didn't say the miracles weren't happening. They were happening. But in the midst, that person or those people doing that get lost in the process. And see, what we think is if somebody walks and lays hands sick for them, and they get recovered, we think, boy, that man or that woman is righteous. Don't we? We think, boy, they got it together. They got to be a man or a woman of God. Look what they've done. They can eat and all that other stuff. They got to be a person of God. Look at that. Man, they're flopping like fishes and everything all around. We think that's got to be, but that's where they don't know the Lord. Things like that can happen in not knowing the Lord. And so Jesus warns us that miraculous things will happen, but people will take advantage of that, and they'll use that, but they themselves don't know the Lord. Now look at Psalms 24, verse 1.
Come on, preach it.
It says, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded upon the seas and established upon the floods. Here's what it says. Who shall ascend to the hill of the Lord? Or who will stand in his holy place? It is he who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God, from the God of salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and lift them up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? It is the Lord of hosts, and he is the King of glory. Amen. Yes. There's a generation who is rising up, who's nameless and plateless, and all they want to do is seek the face of God. Yes. This is a generation who will seek him in the midst of a perverse and wicked generation. This is the people who got to know Jesus, who do miraculous things because they know him and want people to know him. Yes. Amen. Yes. It's a generation who's rising up and saying, I want to serve God in the middle of this generation.
Yes.
This is a generation who seeks his face.
Yes.
Who cries out because they know he's the Lord of glory. We serve the Lord of glory who is mighty and strong, who is able to do all things and not fail. This is a generation who loves God more than they love themselves.
Yes.
It's a generation who's not fearing anything, but love God more than anything else. They're a generation that'll go to the highways. Amen. They're the generation that'll go to the byways. They're the generation who will rise up in the last days. They're the generation who don't fear nothing but God Himself. This is the generation God is looking for.
Yes.
Are you that generation?
Yes.
Are you that generation He's looking for?
Yes.
Are you the one who's going to rise up in the last days?
Yes. Yes.
A generation who loves and is more concerned with his brother than he is with how he looks in life. Come on.
Yeah.
A generation that cares, that is compassionate.
Thank you, Lord.
A generation who has mercy. A generation who knows the Lord. And doesn't know of the Lord, but knows Him. Know Him intimately. Are you that generation? Are you like what we talked about last week when walking away from His presence? See, He's looking for a generation that will love Him. Now listen to this. Dry times come. That's when the miraculous comes as well. When we look at the patriarchs, or we look at Joseph, and we see that he was sold into slavery into Egypt, and he went from, a promise, it seemed like, to a pit, to a prison, right, to a palace, and all these things that he's had to go through. And yet he, in that great favor with God and with man, becomes second in charge of all the land. Pharaoh loved him. Pharaoh trusted him. Pharaoh knew who he was, loved him and his father, loved Jacob. He loved him. He knew him. But the Bible says in the book of Exodus, the first chapter, that another Pharaoh came into power. And they had forgotten the promise in Joseph. And in that season, they began to worry. And they said, these people grow mighty and they are fruitful, they're multiplying. In other words, they were in a season of growth. And in the season of growth, it looked like things were going away. But he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to treat them bad. I'm going to put them under. He goes, well, my fear is, that's what Pharaoh's fear was, that if I go to war with another people, the Hebrews will join to them, and they'll come against us, and they'll kill us, and they'll be greater and mightier than we are. So let's put them under heavy burdens. Let's put them under the pressures of life. Let's put them under a great taskmaster. Let's beat them down so they don't do anything. And if that doesn't work, let's murder their children. And so Pharaoh gave a commandment to kill the children, to stop the growth, to keep it from growing. And it succeeded. They began to kill the children, but there was two midwives who were faithful to God, and they didn't kill the children. In fact, they saved the life of Moses, and we know the story later. Moses goes on, but for a long time before Moses came, there was hundreds of years, 400 years of them being under the taskmaster, and it looked like the miraculous and what God was doing had slipped them, and I bet they even became complacent and forgot who God was. And during that time, that God was looking at a people, and their cry was going up, and it was hitting the ears of God. And at the whole time, I bet they're wondering, where is God in all of this? Where is He? Where is the promise of the promised land? Where is the hope that where is the story we've heard from our fathers about this great God, Yahweh, who has been on our side? Where is this? And for years and years and years, it seemed like God wasn't for them. It looked like they were under the taskmaster. But what they didn't know was that God was growing them in the midst of persecution. In the middle of persecution, the more they were persecuted, the more they began to grow, and the more they began to rise up. And what they didn't realize was God was up to something. And at the right time, at an appointed time, when it was time for the miraculous, God in the wilderness calls Moses, out there tending the sheep of Jethro. And there he was in the middle of a burning bush. And the first thing God begins to do is say, let me show you the miraculous again. Roll your staff down. Watch it turn to a snake. Put your hand in your cloak. See it turns leprosy? He said, listen, I'm the God of miraculous. And why was he showing this? Because I want people to know that I'm the God who sees and knows and hears the cry of the people. So in the wilderness, God begins to show himself strong on their behalf. In Egypt, he begins to show plagues and different things. It was a great time of need, so there was a great time of the miraculous.
Yeah.
And see, we're heading into a time of great need. And there's going to be a need of great miraculous things to happen. Great things were happening. And they begin to see God open. You know, for us standing on this side of eternity, many of us probably said they were fools. If I would have seen the Red Sea parted, man, if I would have seen manna from heaven, I would have seen locusts, I would have seen lice fall on people, I would have seen boils and frogs, man, if I would have seen the angel of death, if I would have seen all that, man, I would have served God.
Right.
Oh, some of y'all said that.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't even serve God when your bill goes a little bit farther down than you think it does.
Come on now.
Oh my goodness. First time your car breaks down, you forgot God again. My goodness. Kicking your tire saying, what kind of piece of junk did God give me? But if I would have been there, I would have served God. People began to forget who the Lord was. And all they had was certain stories. Go to Psalm 78. And I'll wrap it up. It's a little bit old. 78 verse 1. I believe that God is wanting to bring the miraculous not only for this generation we live in, but for the next generation. I believe that what God has given us, even the word that He's given us to build the old ruined places, that the places those is for generational things. Psalm 78, verse 1, it says, give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to my words. I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old, which you heard and known. And our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and His strength and His wonderful works that He has done. For He has established a testimony in Jacob, and He appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children, that they may set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but to keep His commandments, that they may be like their fathers, that they may be like, the verse 8, and may not be like their fathers, listen to this, a stubborn and rebellious generation. I want you to underline this last statement. A generation that did not set its heart aright, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. A generation that did not set its heart aright, underline that in your minds, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. So after all that God had done for them, parting the Red Sea, all that God had done for them by causing the plagues, all that God had done for them, feeding them the fowls of the air and the manna, for all that He's done for them, bringing them in the promised land, for all that He had done for them in the wilderness, they forgot and began to push away from God. All that He had done for them, they began to push away God. And they became a generation that was stubborn and rebellious, whose heart they didn't set right, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. See, if there's a generation that I say is we're living in, is a generation that's a rebellious generation. It's a generation who is stubborn. Go on the streets for 5 minutes. We live in a generation who is rebellious, who is stubborn, and who have forgotten the stories of our fathers. We have forgotten the commandments of our God. We have forgotten who He is. We have forgotten all those things. And yet, He said, set your heart on Him. Put your hope in the resurrection of the dead. Put your hope in the one who conquered death itself. Put your hope in Him. And tell your children, and the children that not even be born, your grandchildren, and your great-great-grandchildren, pass on the stories of the wonderful works that He's done. And tell the generation, don't be rebellious and stubborn like we did in our generation. Don't be wicked and do the things that we used to do in our generation. Live for God now. Serve Him now while it's time. Set your heart aright and have your faithful heart and your soul fixed on Him and fixed on Him. Tell the stories of the greatness. People today, young children, are waiting for mentors. Maybe they're looking for me and you to say, let me tell you the stories of our Father.
Yes, come on now.
Let me tell you that you may know the God who opened the Red Sea. People have been waiting in anticipation. They want something to believe in. They want someone to believe in. And why should we not tell them the greatness of our God? Why can't we tell them how wonderful He is and tell them that He is able to do all things? Let's tell the next generation.
Yes.
But don't be like our fathers who were rebellious and stubborn and didn't set our Father. You know what all that means is the people that didn't see. The last thing we know for in this generation, there was a generation, you know what the generation after us said? Yeah, there was a generation before us. They had a lot of neat things. They even had some miraculous things happen. But they didn't know the Lord. They were rebellious and stubborn. They didn't know Him. I want to be the generation that seeks His face.
Yes.
Let's be the generation that has clean hands and a pure heart,
Yes.
who will sit in the field of our God and believe God for the miraculous. He's going to open up the season of miraculous again because there's going to be a need to. Don't be fooled. Don't grow weary. Don't get, taken out because of somebody's not knowing the Lord. Watch. Be watchful. Pray. Keep your heart right before Him. Because He's looking to show Himself strong in something. The question is, are you that generation? Would you stand with me? Are you that generation? So really, what God asked me was this: are you the generation I'm looking for? A generation that will see me. Because that's really what it is at the end of the day. He wants to know, do we know Him and love Him above everything else? Back last year, do you love me more than this? Do we love Him more than all this? Are we the generation that will seek Him? And let me ask you this, don't seek the Lord. I'll tell you this, don't seek the Lord because you have to. Seek Him because you want to.
Amen.
If you read the Word because you have to, and I know sometimes we have to force our flesh to get in line with our spirit, but there has to be a desire in us to want to know Him. If you don't want to know Him, if you've lost your desire to know Him, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right? You need to make sure you're with Him. I want to be a generation. Do you want to be that generation that seeks Him? That knows Him? Let's pray. Follow with our hands lifted up. Lord, we want to be the generation that seeks Your face. We can't tell other people who You are if we don't know You ourselves. We want to be a generation that knows You. God, teach us, God, how to pass the stories of the greatness of what You've done in our lives to our children, God, to our children's children. We want to be a people, God, who love You above everything else. You said to love you with our heart, mind, soul, and strength. Teach us how to do this. You said to love our neighbor as ourselves. Teach us how to do this. Lord, I know there's a time of the miraculous coming, God. Don't let's get caught up in the hype and the miraculous and miss you. But God, I know that you're rising up with healing in your weeks. God, I'm believing in the miraculous. I'm believing in the healing, God. I'm believing in the signs and the wonders. We don't seek it, God. We don't beat down a door to find it. We know, God, that you're coming. The sign that we look for is the fact that you rose from the dead. So we serve you and love you, God. We worship you. Holy Spirit, I'm asking that you reign in this place. Mighty rushing wind blow through this place. Reignite our hearts, Holy Spirit. Catch us on fire again, God. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name. You want to sing that song? Okay.